Okay, so solving quadratics. Remember I told you before, if they tell you to find the roots, that's the same word as the solutions. Another word they're going to use that means the same as the zeros. Zeros, roots, solutions, and all of math, they all mean the same thing. So, just to remind you what this is we just got done graphing. So if you graphed a parabola and they told you to solve it, the solutions are where they cross the x-axis. So the solution of this parabola is -1 and 4. Okay? So if you already have the graph, that's pretty easy. Now, if you don't have the graph, what you got to do is remember, this is the point 3 over 0 up, and this is the point -1 over 0 up. What do those 2 points have in common? The y's are both zeros. So in order to solve it, you would have to plug 0 in for the y. When we get to the equation, the longer equations, okay? Now, we're going to be doing the simpler ones right away, where it only has an x squared in it. If it has an x squared, then it's a simple one to solve. We did it in like the first section. They just said, solve this equation. So what do you got to do to get rid of the 1/4? Take it times 4 over 1. And you get x squared equals 36. Then you square root it, x equals 6. Now this is where you got to remember, it can be +6 or -6. Because if you made the graph of it like we just did, or in the last few days, it would cross at -6 and +6. Yep. So that's why you'll always have either 2 solutions. One solution would just mean it just touches at one spot. Or if you ever have one that doesn't intersect, that's a no solution. So what's going to happen for a no solution is when you solve it, you'll get an error on your calculator. Okay? So this one we're doing graphically. Now, remember when we graphed these, or when we did them before, it was always y equals something, right? So what you got to do is you got to have everything on the same side. You'd either have to move these 2 over or move this one over here. It's easier, if you can keep these positive, it makes it a lot easier. So I'd write as x squared plus 2x minus 3. So in order to graph this, we got to do -b over 2a. So it's -2 over 2, 2 times 1. So x equals -1. Then you got to plug -1 in order to figure out where the vertex is at. So this would be -1 squared is 1, plus 2 times -1 is -2, take away 3 is -4. So they did that right there. Then they plugged in 0, and it ended up being -3. They flipped it over, and then they plugged in 1, and they got 0. And then they flipped that over this line. It's 2 away, so you go 2 over here. So when you put in -3, it's 0. So these are the 2 solutions. Now, these we aren't going to solve yet, because because if you tried to solve when it has both an x and an x squared, like this right there, in order to solve that, you can't get just the x by itself because there's an x squared and an x. Does that make sense? There's a method coming up in the next section that I think we did a little bit in 8th grade. Maybe not, I don't remember. Have you ever heard of the quadratic formula?
No.
Yeah? That's what you use to solve these. So for now, we're just going to do by the graphs. So, if it's like this, where there's just an x squared, we don't need to graph. We're just going to solve them. Because to get the x by itself, you first take it times the reciprocal. You get x squared equals 64. Square root it, and you get 8. But you got to remember it's plus or minus 8, because if you graphed it, it would cross at negative 8 and positive 8.
Can't you just look at the graph?
Yeah, you can, but you won't have the graph on your assignment.
Oh.
You'll just have the equation. So here, since it's a negative, you take it times negative 3 over 1. Take it times negative 3, and you get x squared equals 9. So you square root, and you get plus or minus 3. So there they went by 2, so there's plus 3 and minus 3. Here's the graphic ones. We can see that they go by 2s, so the two solutions are negative 2 and 4. Here they also go by 2s, so that is what?
5.
Negative 5 and
3, 1.
1. Okay. Now remember, they don't always cross at whole numbers though. You know, they may cross at 1.5 or 3.7 or whatever. So that's when we use the quadratic formula, which is next. Or we can do them on the calculators, the graphing calculators.